Guys, welcome to the video. I'm super excited about this one. I've got my hands on the Canon R7 crop mirrorless body and the kit lens, the 18 to 150mm zoom. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm looking for a replacement with my current stock photography and stock footage setup, which is a Canon 70D with two Sigma lenses, a medium zoom, which is a 17 to 50mm f2.8 IS, and a Sigma 70 to 200mm f2.8 IS. So this kit lens is 18mm to 150mm, which would pretty much cover the ranges of the other two Sigma lenses, and I wouldn't have to change lenses. I did a test for another possible replacement for my stock photography setup, and that was with the Canon RP mirrorless full frame body, which is the cheapest full frame Canon mirrorless body on offer, and the super zoom 24mm to 240mm to see if that would be my next stock photography, stock footage gear. Photographically, that really performed strongly. It was only let down on the video side of things because it didn't have 4K at 60p and had some other issues when you're filming 4K that wouldn't make it an easy and high quality hybrid body to switch from photos to video. So I chose not to go with that setup, and now I've got my hands on the Canon R7, which does 4K 60, and it also has other 4K options as well as the standard 24p. So I'm going to test this lens and camera body setup to see how good it is with video and photos, and I'm not going to make the decisions myself. I'm going to upload the footage and the photos to the stock agencies and let them decide whether the images and the footage is good enough to be my next camera body for stock photography and stock footage. So without further ado, I'm at the airport. I'm going to take photos and video of planes taking off from the runway, and let's see how the Canon R7 with the 18 to 150 perform. Okay, well, I spent some days with the Canon R7 and the 18 to 150mm super zoom, and I definitely have some clear ideas of what the combination of the camera and the lens's strengths and weaknesses are. During the days that I had the combination, I spent a lot of time doing some early morning landscape photography here around The Hague. I also went to the south of the Netherlands near Zeeland and did a lot of nature and landscape photography there with the combination. Ultimately, I went to the east of the Netherlands for the annual red deer rutting season, and I put the combination and the camera through its paces, photographing and videoing the majestic red deer stags as they are fighting with their competition, and also trying to keep the female red deer in their harems. So I have a pretty good package of photos and videos that I've tested the combination on to get an idea of whether it is a good camera and lens setup for stock photography. But it doesn't really matter what I think about the combination. What matters is that the stock agencies accept the photos and videos, and that they are able to be uploaded to those agencies and are selling successfully on those platforms. So what matters is that the stock agencies accept the files, the photos and videos, and that they're able to be uploaded to those platforms to be sold commercially to customers and editorial customers such as newspapers and magazines. Okay, well, I think it's time we went into the computer and checked out some of those files to see what the quality is like. Okay, so we'll start off with probably the most spectacular photo that I took with the R7. And I actually took this photo with the combination of the R7 and my EF lens, the 400mm f5.6 fixed prime lens unstabilized, and I just wanted that extra reach of the 400mm. So this first photo is of a red stag that was chased away from a harem of does, female red deer, by another red stag. He was running quite fast at this stage, and I had the camera on a tripod with a video fluid head, so I was kind of moving left to right with the stag, and I was taking a combination of photos and videos. So this is one of the photos, and if we click to 100% on his head, it looks pretty sharp there on the eye. Yeah, I think this is the sharpest one I got of the stag running, and you can see here the texture of its fur, and the eye is fairly sharp. This is unedited, this file. You could pump up the sharpness a little bit more, and there just the extra definition comes out. And even though it's not totally sharp, I think it is good enough for the stock agencies. And if you look at the rack or the antlers, it could have slightly missed focus because this part of the antler looks actually sharper than the eyeball. So yeah, it's okay. This fur here looks pretty sharp. I'll tell you what settings I had this on, and that was taken at ISO 500, 400mm, f7.1 at 1250th. Maybe I could have bumped up the shutter speed a little bit more. This one was a miss, totally unsharp. Also looks a little bit overexposed. Bring the highlights down and the exposure maybe. And then we'll move on to the next one, and this is of a red stag roaring, and there it is at full view at 400mm, and this was ISO 800 f7.1 at 1250th of a second, and that is pretty sharp actually. I'm pretty happy with that. Got some nice eyeball action there, a little bit of motion blur with the mouth there, but the eye looks relatively sharp. Another one that's even sharper. That's really good image quality, that. And same settings again, ISO 800, etc. A little bit darker, less exposed. And that's for running. It's a little less sharp, I think. Maybe that's motion blur. The eyeball's not particularly sharp with that one, but it's also not terrible. So we'll move on to some other pics. Here's a photo of a lot of the other photographers who had gathered at the same spot to photograph them. And this photo was taken at 7.1 ISO 640 and 640th of a second. I did take this on a tripod, so there shouldn't be any motion blur, but I'm happy with that image quality. It looks sharp, nice and contrasty. No editing whatsoever to the photo except for the automatic corrections. So I also took the 18 to 150 millimeter zoom lens to the velour, and I had some mixed results with that for subjects that were up close, and it does focus very close to subjects, but I noticed that the image quality for me was not overly fantastic. And if you go in 100%, this is the sharpest shot that I was able to get, and that was at 500 ISO, 89 millimeters, an f6.3 and 1/40th of a second. 1/40th of a second was about the lowest shutter speed I could get to on this lens combination. Shutter speeds under that tended to be quite soft and affected by motion blur. I went to the outer runway called the Polder Barn, and you've got the tower here in the background, and you've got these fast moving jets moving from right to left, and they're taking off in heavy rain, so it's quite spectacular with the rain spray. So if we go in here, at 100% at ISO 100, 118 millimeters at f6.3, which is the maximum aperture at that focal range, and 1/400th of a second. I made a critical error when I was photographing these planes, and that was I accidentally left the UV filter that the camera hire service put on the lens on. So that may have affected the image quality of these airplane photos. But at 100%, it's sharp, but it's not spectacularly sharp. But it's a nice photo anyway. We'll go to this one, and I think I was focusing towards the front of the aircraft, and that does look sharp, whereas back here it looks a little bit fuzzy. Back on the dunes of The Hague now, and I was standing on top of a dune, and I photographed these joggers going past. This is them blown up at 100%, ISO 200, 150 millimeters at 1/500th of a second at maximum aperture f6.3. So that's pretty good. Okay, we've got some standard stock photography stuff now, and this is what they call a buckfiets in the Netherlands, and you can put your kids in this contraption and ride them to school. And at 100%, it's perfectly sharp at f6.3 at 35 millimeters, 200th of a second at ISO 100. And this is an unedited file. Yep, so you could increase the sharpness even further if you wanted, although I would be reluctant to, and also the noise reduction. That's perfectly usable in my eyes. Down on the island near Zeeland, we've got some landscapes now, and this is one landscape that I took. I wasn't particularly overwhelmed with how sharp this image was, but the contrast and colour is quite nice. I took this at f6.3 wide open again, so I didn't really test the lens's optics by stopping down to say f7.1 or f8. It's at 1/800th of a second at 18 millimeters at the widest end at ISO 100. And even though I had my doubts about how crisp this image was, it did get accepted to the stock agencies. Okay, we've got some more standard landscapes here, and this is 18 millimeters again, 1/400th of a second at ISO 100 at f6.3, and this is a stud ram who has been put in a paddock with female sheep in order to breed. So at the end of the winter, these females will be giving birth, and this guy here will be the dad. And I'm impressed with this image. It's very sharp and very vibrant, excellent contrast, so very impressed with this image at the wide end. Now, I did a test with the camera using my old EFS 17 to 50 millimeter f2.8 Sigma lens, and I tested it in comparison to the Canon 18 to 150 millimeter lens to see what the difference in image quality was. And here we've got the 18 to 150 millimeter taken at 50 millimeters at f6.3 at 1/100th of a second at ISO 800. We zoom into 100% and it looks pretty sharp, and the noise is nice and controlled. It's still contrasty and the colors are good, or the colors are good. And here we have the Canon, the Sigma 17 to 50 millimeter lens taken at its sharpest at f5.6 at 1/80th of a second at ISO 500. And I do not see any noticeable difference in regards to sharpness or contrast. Here it's blown up to probably 200%. So they were even on that one. And here I've got the Sigma 17 to 50 millimeter on the Canon R7. I used the EF to RF adapter, and I just took a typical autumn shot, and I wasn't totally impressed with the sharpness of this image. So what I did was I increased the sharpness quite a lot just to see if it would get accepted to the stock agencies, and it did, which surprised me. Yeah, I'm just not sure about whether that depth of field is deep enough or it's sharp enough. But anyway, I've done another test comparison between the Sigma lens and the Canon 18 to 150 here. On this shot I have a fungi on a tree, and it's taken at 50 millimeters at ISO 400, 1/100th of a second at 6.3 aperture. And there we go, 100% in, and I took about 40 or 50 shots of this, and this is probably the sharpest one I got, which is not very impressive with the Sigma lens adapted to the R7 and its 32 megapixel sensor, which seems to be demanding a lot from the lens, and the lens just doesn't seem to be able to deliver. Okay, now here we have the 18 to 150, and that's taken at f5.6, 1/100th of a second at 50 millimeters at ISO 250. So that first one was ISO 400. This one's 250. So yeah, it's not identical settings, But having said that, I think the 18-150 slightly outperforms the Sigma lens. Got another shot here. Yeah. And here we have the Sigma. These settings are a bit better. We've got ISO 125, 50mm, f4, which is probably the sharpest aperture for this lens, and 1/80th of a second with the image stabilization of the lens on. And as you can see, it's just not very sharp. So mixed results there with the adapted Sigma glass. Let's go to some of the videos now. And we've got this video of the stud ram taken with the 18-150, and this one was taken at 4K, and I think it was taken at 4K 60. So this is an unedited video, so you can see the grass is a bit washed out. I haven't added any saturation or contrast or highlight reduction to that one. And here's one of an unedited 4K fine, which is a 6K clip that's downsized to 4K. And I'm really happy with the quality of that clip and the sharpness. That's 4K fine, downgraded or downsized from 6K to 4K. And we'll go for the 4K crop mode at 50p of the red stags in the rutting season. Here we go. This is an unedited clip. So here's the stag. This is 4K crop at 50p. Okay. And here's a landscape, 4K fine, unedited. And that's nice and sharp, that image. And now we'll go to the airport and get some of the planes taking off. With these clips, keep an eye on the background to see if any of the structures that are vertical suffer from warpage or bend because of the movement of the camera. And I'm pretty impressed with this. The structures in the background stay very straight, so there wasn't too much warping. So I'm happy with those. And I just did a test for the image stabilization for video at long distances. So here is a storm. I was standing on top of a sand dune, and I was being buffeted by the wind, and I managed to put my elbows on the top of a fence, and the image stabilization was handling that pretty well. This is at 150mm at standard 4K 60, unedited. So I was happy with that. Okay, now let's go to the stock agency and see what photos and videos got accepted and what ones didn't. Okay, here we go. So you can see here number of photos that got accepted. Around 15 photos got accepted. There's that landscape one I took. And the stud ram, they all got accepted to Shutterstock. I only uploaded to Shutterstock this time. They're pretty picky with deciding what to accept and what not to accept, so I thought it would be a good test. Here's a landscape which was pretty demanding because the subject was quite far away, and it was good enough quality to be accepted by Shutterstock. And here are those two images of the stag that got accepted, and that cluster of oak leaves. And even though the lens had the UV filter on the end of it, I still managed to get these tricky shots, challenging shots of the jets accepted. Okay, so let's have a look at what was not accepted. And here we go, recently reviewed. Here we have rejection and similar content, and noise and artifacts for that one, and noise and artifacts for these ones as well. These were taken with the UV filter on the lens, and also it was quite a hazy day, so I'm not sure if that was due to conditions, user error, or just the lens not being good enough. But most of those skyline ones of The Hague got rejected, which was pretty disheartening, because a couple of them I thought were okay, but when I zoom into 100%, they do look a little bit over sharpened and waxy. Well, let's have a look at the videos now. And as you can see, I got a good selection of videos that were accepted. I didn't take a huge amount of videos, but that's a good cross section. We've got the one of the sheep here. This one of the red deer. Put that up. This is only on the website, so the resolution is very low. And this one got accepted. He got a bit of a scare there and stopped suddenly. And here we have the jets. I'm panning handheld right to left here. It's all handheld, these jet photos. So, and let's have a look at what wasn't accepted. Similar content for those red stag photos, videos. And this one was approved, that's approved. This one was rejected because of camera stabilization, so I was a bit wobbly on that one. And the others were approved. So the ratio of approved to not approved is definitely more on the side of the approved. So that's a success for the video. A real success. So overall, what do I think of the Canon R7 and the 18 to 150mm lens? I think in comparison, when I did the review of the Canon superzoom 24mm to 240mm, I was more impressed with its capabilities in combination with the Canon mirrorless RP full frame body. The big drawback with this combination, however, with the R7 is that it has this super high resolution 32 megapixel sensor, and for some circumstances the 18 to 150mm lens, which is a kit lens, is just out resolved by the sensor, and it just struggles a little bit. It's very challenging. It's also challenging to use my Sigma EFS glass on this body as well, because I wasn't happy with the photo results of the 17 to 50 Sigma lens when it was adapted to the R7. When I used the EF 400mm L lens, the results were satisfactory, were quite good actually, quite sharp. There doesn't seem to be any Canon glass or third-party glass except maybe the Sigma 18 to 35mm, which is crisp or sharp enough with that sensor. But having said that, I have put the combination through the test and the results were good enough to be accepted by the stock agency for both video and photos. So that lens is actually good enough for stock photography and stock videography. Would I buy this combination in the future? If the R7 had a 20 or 24 megapixel sensor, then I think I would not hesitate. But just my tests with those other lenses and sometimes the rejections which were surprising from the stock agency puts a little seed of doubt in my mind. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer and see what the full frame option is with the Canon R8 when it comes out, or if it comes out. If I was only doing stock photography and not stock videography, then I think I would definitely go with the Canon RP and the superzoom 24 to 240mm lens for a general stock photography setup. But because I'm moving more towards video, I would not go with that option because the RP is not a strong video camera, whereas the Canon R7 has some very strong specifications for video. Thanks very much for staying with me right to the end, guys, and I will see you in the next video.